So today we're presenting about the Tabasco flood in 2007. Next slide, please. My name is Jennifer.
I'm Gabe.
And I'm Aisha.
So the type of disaster is a geophysical disaster, and there's immediate causes and mediate causes that the government of Mexico defined. And there's the immediate causes of the floods were extraordinary rains, especially due to their duration in the basins of the Sierra rivers and the Peñitas Dam basins. Additionally, the floods did not occur in isolation, but in a train of successive floods, which was subject to the extreme downward conditions of the Peñitas Dam. However, the existence of the damage system in the Grijalva induced the Peñitas Dam, and its proper operation prevented further damage. The need for better hydrometeorological forecast, risk maps, and early warning system is highlighted. For the immediate causes, where four major immediate causes, number one is the greater vulnerability to floods, mainly due to the presence of human settlements in high-risk areas that have also decreased the capacity of the channels. Second was the lack of hydraulic control infrastructure. Third, we have the lack of the better forecasting and early warning system. And fourth was the lack of comprehensive growth management plan. Second slide, please.
The 2007 Tabasco flood took place in the state of Tabasco in the country of Mexico. Tabasco is located southeast of the country, as you can tell by the green highlighted area on the map to the left side of the screen. Villahermosa, Tabasco's state capital, was one of the cities that were most heavily impacted by the flood, with a population of more than 500,000 people, although the flood did spread in the most southern parts of Tabasco and even into the state of Chiapas. So this is an aerial view of the flood. The dark blue colors in this image show the spread of the flood. It covered vegetation, which here is represented in the color green, and man-made surfaces, also a great color in this image, where some of the people in the low-lying areas lived. It most heavily impacted low-lying areas, like I said, in areas with poorer populations.
So what exactly happened? First of all, what caused the major flooding was a week-long period of rain caused by a cold front in late October and early November of 2007 that left as much as 80% of the state underwater. The Grijalva River, which is one of the two large waterways that surrounds Villahermosa, which is the capital city of Tabasco, rose 2 meters above its critical level, sending water rushing into the city center. The state of Chiapas also suffered mass flooding, affecting 11,000 people, damaging 5,000 houses, and leaving 300 kilometers worth of damage on the roads. In total, at least 20,000 people were forced to leave their houses in search of emergency shelter, and over 1 million residents of Tabasco were affected in some way by the flooding. While many people consider only the damage done to people's homes, the flood also destroyed many theaters, libraries, schools, and museums. While the economic damage of the flood was not noticeable on the global scale, some prices of products increased, such as bananas and cacao beans, as a result of the destruction of these large farms that produced most of these products for Mexico. Tabasco produces 80% of all of Mexico's cacao beans and 40% of its bananas, and the General Peasant Confederation stated that because of the flooding, 100% of these harvests were lost, representing an economic damage of $480 million. The president of Mexico, Felipe Calderón, sent 7,500 people to assist the residents of Tabasco with the reparations of major damage to roads, houses, and farms. According to Felipe Calderón himself, this flood was one of the worst natural disasters in the history of the country. And that's it.
So, like we explained before, the flood was largely a geophysical related disaster. Ultimately, riverbanks were flooded, which caused waters to rise and spread. The weather also had a lot to do with the flood. On October 28th, 2007, a cold front produced a sharp change in weather, which prompted a downpour of heavy rainfall, and which in turn caused rivers to overflow. Cold fronts can be very strong. They happen when colder air travels underneath warmer air at the surface. Those that produce strong showers, like the one here, generally depend on things like wind shear, which is like the speed or direction of the wind, and then other atmospheric conditions like how much moisture is in the atmosphere and air density are products of rainstorms. In the case of Tabasco, because it did happen in the fall time, there was a much stronger temperature change. And this, like I said, caused heavy rainfall to occur. Some areas actually received as much as 30 inches of rain and more rainfall from the Grijalva River, one of the two main river systems in Tabasco. There are some things that are believed to have made the flooding worse, including construction along roads and buildings, causing land erosion and deforestation. Woodlands are important for blocking precipitation. It also increases the chances of a flood. The deforestation also increases the chances of a flood by allowing silt to deposit on the riverbed. Prior to the Tabasco flood, there were several organizations that collected money for flood prevention, and this was made in order to raise levees and transfer these populations out of the low-lying areas as well.
Some of the general statistical facts of the Tabasco flood was that 19 confirmed deaths. It also caused hundreds to go missing and left hundreds of thousands homeless. 80,000 people from the flood city of Villahermosa have taken refuge in 2007 in cramped schools, churches, and a multi-story parking garage. Next slide, please. Some of the economic losses was that Tabasco's governor Andres Garnier declared that about 4/5 of Tabasco was underwater, estimating a $5 billion damage. And he also pledged to create a $607 million in reconstruction fund. The U.S. announced that it will provide $1.4 billion in military aid. However, the U.S. Embassy of Mexico City said it will donate a paltry of 300,000 Mexican pesos to help victims of the Tabasco flood. And as Gabriel mentioned, there was 80% of Mexico's cacao loss, as well as the 40% of the country's bananas, in which about 30,000 families depended on agriculture for their livelihood. Next, please.
So, what was the lasting impact of this event? While it didn't cause a large global reaction due to the basically non-existent impact the event had on a global level, it still led to many questions being raised regarding the miscommunication and oversights that led to the flood being as devastating as it was. The reason that the Tabasco floods were so destructive was largely due to the sinking of the land over the last century. The constant extraction of petroleum and natural gas was a large point of concern for scientists, determining why the flood was so vast, along with the construction of dams in the zone and the erosion of the surrounding land caused by deforestation. This deforestation has caused more silt to collect in the rivers of Tabasco, as previously mentioned, meaning that the capacity of these rivers to hold water has significantly diminished. All of these factors, combined with the presence of a low pressure system nearby, led to a much more destructive period of flooding than would have otherwise been seen if more systems were in place to prevent this. The only question is, what exactly are these systems? Well, as a result of this flood, Mexico began the construction of breakwaters in order to create artificial harbors that worked to protect ships from the effects of waves if another flood were to occur. Furthermore, they began to implement seawalls along the shores to protect the land from erosion Again, a very important factor that was further caused by waves hitting the land. Finally, Mexico began to dredge, which is a fancy way for saying clean out, the silt from the rivers of Tabasco in order to increase the volume of water that the river can hold in the case of another period of very heavy rainfall, if that ever happens to Tabasco again. And then the final slide. And these are just the sources we use to find our information. Thank you.